Test, test. Test, test.
Oh, thank you.
All right, it's 6:30, so I'd like to start the study session of Urbana School District 116. Roll call, please.
Members Stanton, Member Jones,
Here.
Member Hasanaka,
Here.
Member Baxley here, Vice President Exum,
Here.
President Pulaski.
Here. Are there any additions, corrections, or modifications to tonight's agenda? Hearing none. It's time for citizen statements. If anyone would like to make a citizen statement before the board, please fill out a goldenrod sheet in the back of the room and hand it to our recording secretary, Lori Johnson. First up is Yuli Brishnikov.
I was told by a member of the board that you don't understand me properly because of mask accent. So I will be talking louder and therefore slower. And therefore I will need more time. As an alternative, I will request a translator who will be able to translate from my English to English, which will be understandable to the member of the board. Okay? I'll be talking today about the report cards of the Illinois School Board of Education, which will be presented today by Dr. Norton. Many doctors here, very intimidating. This report should be presented actually by the board to the citizens of the town. The board is routinely neglecting this duty, which is written up explicitly in the policy. You, members of the board, should read the report, internalize it, understand, and tell us what do you think. Rather, year after year, the administration spins whichever the report says. So let me tell you what the report says. Not what the press release of the administration presents. The report says that the district is in dire shape. Our schools are bad. To remind you, the partition of the school, the summative designations are approximately the following. There is the bulk of the school, 2/3 of them are called commendable. It's not good schools, it's okay schools. Most of them are there. The exemplary schools, the best ones. I don't know how back this district should go to find an exemplary school, probably never. because they didn't introduce this summative designations long ago. But commendable. Is it hard? Yes, it is hard. This year, the number of commendable schools in the district, a proud one. Well, there was another one, Wiley, which with your approval, the district closed. Other schools, targeted. Means some categories, and typically the most vulnerable one, are served at the level of the 5 worst schools in the state. Or comprehensive, where all students are the worst among 5% worst in the state at the level of their education. Or intensive schools. Intensive schools, you know, if the school in the district is bad, the state, in its wisdom, decides to reward the district to pay to those schools more. And if year after year after year you fail to improve your school, then the state gives you the title intensive. Now we proudly have an intensive school in this district. This happens on your watch, President Pelosi, on your watch, Vice President Exum. When this administration inevitably will fall due to some scandal or other, that's how we'll remember what you brought to the district. But this is general observations. I mean, we all know that the district is not run well. Administrators are paid a lot. There are too many of them. Teachers are paid little. There are too few of them. But what I actually want to talk today is how the district specifically fails. I mean, district fails everybody. But it seems that they intend to fail at the most vulnerable people, English learners. So one of the schools which slid from commendable to targeted, Lille, because of the English learners, sorry, I need to continue, because English learners are not served well there. So you keep talking about this dual language program as if it is any advantage to anybody. Well, it's a bad program, we know that. It's free enrichment program for middle-class families, but you sell it as if it were serving English learners. Not true. The two schools which do have the dual language program for the English learners, the Dr. Preston Williams and the Lille, they have worse results in terms of the English learners' achievements in English than the schools where the traditional ESL method to educating them is applied. So English learners in Dr. Preston Williams, 0% of them are meeting state standards. In Lille, 2 to 4%. So these people you will be dragging from grade to grade, pretending they're teaching them. They are unable to read and write. You'll be pretending you're teaching them algebra, pretending you teach them chemistry. They will drop off, or they will go into society completely unprepared. The middle-class families, well, they will find tutors, they will find coaches, they will get their kids educated. The poor kids, and especially immigrant kids, you are failing them. And the report card says it explicitly, not the press release of this district. The report card, black on white. So today, what should have happened is the board would tell us what failure the administration is serving the weakest, the most vulnerable population in this district. 2 members of the board are just not there. They are not interested in that. I am ashamed. I don't know how you are not. Thank you.
Thank you for Mr. Brishkoff. There are no other citizen statements for this evening. There is no call for an executive session after tonight's meeting. The chair would entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I move for approval of the agenda.
Was there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There are no accommodations or recognitions tonight. There is a public hearing, though. As required, there is a public hearing for our e-learning plan. So the chair will open up the floor for anybody present. The room's empty. The floor is open for anybody wishing to speak to the board with regards to the e-learning plan of the district. Calling once, calling twice. Public hearing is closed. Next up is our student ambassador report.
Good evening.
Oh yeah, let's go to the next page.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Leo School is holding a multicultural night where people from all different ethnicities, cultures, and backgrounds come together to celebrate, learn, and teach about each other's cultures and countries. Normally what happens is families have tables dedicated to the culture or country that they are from. And then they give like presentations about it, or they have like representations at their table. And then there's normally food and performances. This year, the UMS and UHS Mariachi and the UHS Ballet Folklorico will be performing Mexican and Latin American music for the multicultural night. Support to Palestinian and Israeli students. During these tough times around the world, many people are suffering in the Middle East. Dominica Winston Turner and I, Paulina Angrave, stand with the victims of both Palestine and Israel. We hope for people who are injured, displaced, kidnapped, and more will be safe, and we hope that those who are dead will be honorably remembered. We urge you to make sure no bullying, violence, or hate crimes come to Palestinians, Muslims, Israelis, and Jewish people at our school. Many children have been largely affected by this issue. Okay. College financial aid night. On Thursday, November 9th from 6 to 7:30 p.m., financial aid night will be held in the UHS lecture hall in Spanish and then in the commons for the English version. Parents and students in the 12th grade are welcome to attend. Come learn about FAFSA application and the simplification of FAFSA. There will be an ISAC corps member and her colleague that will talk about any questions or inquiries about financial aid, and then there also will be counselors there to talk about that too. Congrats to the UHS cross-country team and the swim and dive team. At the last cross-country meet, every student tried very hard, but only 2 people were able to qualify for state, so that is exciting. And then on the girls swim and dive team, they were 6th in their last competition, and Sydney, Cecilia, senior captain Savannah, and Maddie all earned 5th place, and they received medals. So previously, the Urbana School District posted this on their Instagram, recognizing Native American Heritage Month. November is a month where we honor Native Americans and remember their history to learn about their culture. This was first recognized as a U.S. National Month of Honor and Celebration in 1990. There are many types of Native American people. Some are from Central, South, North America, the Caribbean, Canada, etc. Some of these Native Americans are from tribes, others civilization, and then others just little groups that aren't necessarily considered tribes. Some Native American tribes from Illinois are Sauk, Miskaki, Powatomi, Kickapoo, and Winnebago.
The African American Club is hosting us movie night to raise money for their annual HBCU trip. Sorry. You can see Kiera, Shamar, or Mr. Brown for info. We really love for people to come to this event. Congratulations to Urbana Choir. About 2 meetings ago, I wrote about them, and they actually won against many other schools for the foreigner trip, the foreigner performance. A lot of students really enjoyed this. They really enjoyed being out there singing in front of a lot of people. And Miss Park, she said some of the students weren't as familiar with foreigners' music. But once everybody got on stage, I think it hit them what a big deal it was. One student said it all clicked when they saw all the lights on them and everyone's phones out waving in the air. Overall, it was a really cool experience. And then congratulations to Jordan Tyler. You know, she's a really good wrestler. She's really good. She made 3rd in state last year, and she's doing just the same this year. Congratulations to Jordan. And that's all we have for this presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, guys. That's a great. Our administrative report tonight is the fall housing report. Dr. Norton.
Thank you. Okay, so throughout the year, I have come to you with enrollment updates, and we've really been keeping the pulse on this due to the changes we made with our schools this year. First presented August 22nd with a preliminary report, and then the 6-day enrollment report, which was September 5th. And now we're looking at the fall housing report, and this information is sent to the state and is collected on October 1st in all schools throughout the state. And so basically there hasn't been a lot of changes. You'll see overall, since I last presented in September, across the district we're down 31. You'll see that the high school is down 37 from where they were in September. You'll see that Leal is down 8, but so there's not a lot of changes that you'll see with our class sizes. And I'll be going over our class sizes on the school report card report in just a little bit. But so basically, when you look at from September to October, overall district enrollment went from 4,126 to 4,095. So this is a pretty simple report that we're going to start off with. Any questions about this?
The thing that sticks out to me is that this year is 2020, and the next closest year is 1821 in 2019, and probably the average of, you know, we've heard multiple weeks on about how the district's not growing. The average is about 1750 to 1800. On the top end, I don't know, I'm not doing the math, but it seems like we're 200 students above where we've been the last 12 years.
Well, I think these numbers aren't including the prior year's Wiley. So if we added those numbers back into this table, I think they'd be all closer to 2,000 all the way across the board. If I'm mistaken, please correct me.
I mean, you still have the students that were Wiley. I mean, you still have the same, you know, those students just have moved elsewhere.
No, but the reason that the K through 5 subtotals are showing up 1,700, 1,800 across the board is probably because these totals aren't including Wiley in their calculation.
Yeah, Wiley's missing from the prior years. So you'd have to add.
Oh. Right.
All right. Good.
Any Any other questions? Okay.
Thank you very much. Our first study topic tonight is the 2023 Illinois School Report Card. Again, Dr. Norton.
Okay, so for our new board members, just this is a process that we go through every single year. So in November, the fall report cards are usually released right at the end of October. And this is by ISB to, it's an annual report that provides a picture of where all of the schools across the state are performing. You'll see two accountability bands when we look at this data. And so the indicators for each are a little bit different. Elementary and middle are comprised of grades 1 through 8, and high school 9 through 12. Academic indicators make up 75% of a school's designation. You'll see for elementary and middle, 7.5% was for ELA proficiency and 7.5% for math proficiency. ELA growth was 25%, math growth 25%, science proficiency 5%, and English language progress to proficiency was 5%. Now, in some of our schools that did not have enough English learners, that 5% is then designated to other categories. So you may see science proficiency instead of 5% would be 7.5%. They reallocate that percentage. For high school, ELA proficiency is 7.5%, math proficiency 7.5%, graduation rate accounts for 50%, science proficiency for 5%, and again, English language progress to proficiency 5%. You will not see growth for high school because it is the SAT and we don't have it from one year to the next. So again, academic indicators are 75%, and then the other 25% is comprised of what's called the student success and school quality indicators. And so for elementary, 20% of that is based on chronic absenteeism, and 5% is for the climate survey, the 5 essentials that we take. At the high school, chronic absenteeism is 10%. The climate survey counts for 6.67%, and 9th grade on track is 8.3%. So as we're working with our principals, we try to look for those things that we can really control, and climate survey is one of those. We want to make sure that all of the students that need to take that survey, that we pull them in over that window because every percent matters towards designation. Chronic absenteeism, we really want to make sure that we're keeping the pulse on that, making sure that we're correcting any errors, that we're reaching out to our families, we're utilizing our staff that are working with caseloads of students that are struggling with coming to school. This is just another way to show the information that I just shared with you. This is a state report, so I wanted to include that from ISB. You'll see on elementary, again, the blue, the academic piece is 75%, and then 25% by chronic absenteeism and the climate survey. And then the same for high school. We've got the blue that's 75%, and the yellow is what I just shared. So the state also looks at student growth percentile, and what that means is it compares grade level peers with other grade level peers across the state that have the same exact test score. And they look at growth from one year to the next. So again, same age level peers and their same test scores are compared. So this graph just recommends how would that be scored. So those peers that have the same test score, those that make the most gains start off at 99 with the 99th percentile. And then those with the least, it just goes on down and they're ranked in order from those that made the most growth to the least growth. There were a couple changes with the report card this year. The science indicator is based on proficiency for grades 5, 8, and 11. Chronic absenteeism returns to a single scoring band, and that is missing 10% or more days across the school year. And English learner progress to proficiency, that is new this year. So it calculates gains from one year to the next, so from 22 to 23. For a student to be counted for English learner progress to proficiency, they would have had to have been here both years and taken the test. Otherwise, they're not included in that count, even though they're an English learner. So looking at our results across our schools, again, English language progress to proficiency counts as 5%. So you'll see our school's weighted index. When you look at our elementary dual language schools, you'll see that DPW had an indicator score of 72.57 and Leal at 74.63. So reminding you that this is new this year. So those schools may have had students that had been there since kindergarten, but this is new. It was measured from one year to the next. You may think, well, why is the middle school and the high school at 25% and 27%? And that's because you may have had newcomers that have only been in the country for a few years compared to students that had been here since kindergarten. So that will impact the results. Another interesting thing that I want to point out here is other schools that do not have a formal dual language program like Leal and DPW. For example, King, our dual language elementaries are making more progress towards proficiency due to the dual language schools. And again, this is measured by the access assessment. Wanted to share this. These are some new charts that ISB uses this year. So when you look at the district or school report cards, you'll see the schoolhouse. And when you look at that, you'll see the school's overall weighted index. And then that will determine if they're exemplary, commendable, comprehensive, or targeted, or intensive, based on the weighted indicator score. When you look at all those other indicators that I mentioned that make up the score, you can look at that number and then also break it down for each highlighted area, each different color, by their student groups. Want to remind you that a student group, in order for it to be counted, has to be 20 or more students. So for example, I know there were some reports that were being shared on social media, and for example, Leal, there wasn't enough students in grade 3 through 5 to have a black subgroup, because last year in grades 3 through 5 we had less than 20 students, and so it wouldn't have shown that for that subgroup. Looking at the chart on the right, that's just another way to show the breakdown for exemplary and commendable. Again, there's 5 different summative designations that I will review. When you see comprehensive and targeted on the chart on the right, those are 2 separate designations. The reason why they couple those together is because any student that is targeted, any subgroup that is targeted, is performing in that lowest 5%, like the overall comprehensive group. So the annual summative designation, it utilizes all those indicators that I mentioned that comprise how a school is designated. The 75% for academic, the 25% on the 5 essentials and attendance. And so that's reviewed annually to determine a school's overall performance. Then if a school is designated, that school will receive 4 years of school improvement, with the first as a planning year. And then they will receive supports from ISB, which may comprise of data reviews, meeting with them once or twice per month, and then school improvement reports that we have to complete are all part of the process, in addition to carefully monitoring the use of funds to support school improvement. So those 5 designations, first starts with exemplary. Those are the top 10% of schools in the state. Commendable is overall performance that is not the top 10%. For high schools, that means that there's a graduation rate higher than 67%. Targeted support means that there's a student group one or more student groups or a program that has students in that group or program performing in the lowest 5%. Comprehensive is a school that is performing in the bottom 5%. High school, that would mean a graduation rate of below a 67%. You could still have a high school that had a higher graduation rate of above 67%, but if you still had a student group that performed below that indicator, they could still be targeted. So it's not just about the graduation rate. And intensive is a school that has been previously designated comprehensive, went through the school improvement process, and has not made improvement and is still in the bottom 5%. Okay, looking at our designations, you'll see that I've included a couple columns here where our schools were designated last year compared to this year, and what year they are in a cycle if they're designated. And then also the subgroups that are identified. So Urbana High School has been commendable last year and this year. Urbana Middle School was designated comprehensive, and that continues, and they're in their second year of the school improvement cycle for all students. Dr. Preston Williams was comprehensive, and as I mentioned, we didn't make the improvement needed after that improvement cycle, so now they are designated intensive, so that year in the cycle starts all over again. And so all students are designated. Leo was commendable last year. They are now targeted in the subgroups of English learners and low income. King was commendable last year and is now designated targeted for Black and African American students. Thomas Paine was targeted last year and this year, and this is the third year in the cycle, and the targeted groups are Black, African American, and low income. Wiley was commendable last year and is commendable this year. There were not any subgroups identified. Yankee Ridge was commendable and is now comprehensive. This is their first year, and that is for all students. So I did have some questions. I do want to thank our board members. I've met with some individuals, and then I did receive some questions today. So added some information to the slides that I think will help when looking at our results. Comparing class sizes from last year to this year for each one of our elementary grades. Again, these are averages for each grade. Kindergarten last year was at 21.2, currently 20.3. First grade was at 22.3, presently at 20. Second grade 20.9, now at 21.8. Third grade is at 20.7 last year and this year. Fourth grade 20.2 last year and this year. And fifth grade was at 19.3 and went up to 20.1. I was also asked about the number of long-term subs that we had last year compared to this year, and then I also added new teachers to that as well. And last year for elementary we had 35 long-term subs and 31 new teachers. For secondary, we had 35 long-term subs and 30 new teachers. And now this year we have made improvements. For elementary, it went from 35 to 29 for long-term subs and 31 to 21 with new teachers. And secondary is at 28 for long-term subs and 24 new teachers, improving from 35 long-term subs to 28 and 30 new teachers to 24. Okay, now that we have all this information and we process where we're at, what are our current and next steps? And so we have adopted illustrative mathematics for this school year in grades K through 12. One thing that we know with digesting all this information is our students really need consistency and structure. Our long-term subs and our new teachers need resources that they can go to and that they can count on for our students. And so again, this is the first year for illustrative. We're putting that those steps into place for across all levels. Ongoing PD continues with our math consultant, Janet Moore, that is going into all of our schools. Restructuring has occurred and will continue to be evaluated with positions such as our instructional coaches for intentional support in more classrooms at all levels. Previously, it was optional, and now if we see that we have educators that are needing that support, we are requiring that they have that modeling and that support for instruction. NELA, English Language Arts, and Spanish Language Arts Committee was established last spring, and a recommendation will be made to all of you this spring for resources that will be implemented in fall of 2024 for English and Spanish language arts. Again, we need to have some tangible resources that are consistent across all of our grade levels. A student engagement advocate is at each elementary, middle school, and high school, and that is to work with students that are struggling with attendance, conducting home visits, and providing student interventions. We also provide quarterly professional development for our SEAs, and then there also have all of our staff development time as well. Additionally, Panorama Student Success Platform is being utilized. We continue with providing professional development on that because that's key as we're looking at attendance, discipline, interventions, and academic progress, and that is live. We can see that it updates each night. Professional development training on Panorama is being provided for individuals that are in need of more support. We also have professional development for our long-term subs. They're receiving the training with the Luster of Math and with our math consultant, Janet Moore. And then we also have additional specific support through human resources for our long-term subs. Moving forward, we're going to need to really think about our professional development opportunities, looking at our calendar to make sure that we are continuing to support math, continuing to support other areas, but especially our English language arts, Spanish language arts, as we adopt new resources. At the state level, the state board must develop and adopt a comprehensive literacy plan by January 31st, 2024, and create a rubric by July 1st, 2024, and this is focused on the science of reading, a structured literacy approach. In addition, this bill requires the state to develop training opportunities for all educators by January of 2025. And that concludes my presentation. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Board members, any questions for Dr. Norton?
For the SEAs, what does that look like at the high school level now? I mean, are they dealing a lot with the student? And then are we keeping any metrics at all on the responses, like the reason for the absenteeism? And then one more question, hope you get all this.
Yes.
Are there still state regulations centered around absenteeism as it pertains to parents and their responsibility for attendance?
Those are really good questions. So we do have one SEA at each school, including
Right.
our high school, so that it's more focused. We've made it really clear that, you know, our SEAs, their job is attendance. And so part of that is looking at our Panorama data too. If we see that, for example, in Panorama will show, highlight students that are a streak. So if we see that there's consistent days absent, it's looking at that. A lot of questions arise, why are the absences, and checking to see that, you know, calls are being made home, that we're doing home visits, that we have that student on a caseload, that we're doing interventions. You know, that's all part of it. There's still, with the TAOP grant, still accountability on that to report. We have also working with Linda Gibbons, and she's meeting with our schools as well, just to provide more support and keep the pulse on that too. And then as far as accountability with the state or the ROE compared to how it used to be, really with court orders or things like that, it's unfortunately there's a lot of other things that take up that
priority.
space.
Yeah.
And so I would say compared to years past, there's not as more support in that area.
Okay. I wasn't sure if any of that with COVID. I know a lot changed, and just expectations, and even just the ability to kind of monitor that and to have the staffing for that. But I always wondered if there's, if we send anything to parents,
We do.
even if it's just like
Yeah,
a threat that we can't really follow through
Every
on,
2 weeks, there's attendance letters that go home.
Okay.
There's meetings with parents, like I said, home visits.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Are people overall responsive, or is it more of a struggle, or does that vary more so by the school and the student?
I think it helps, when our schools are reaching out, and especially the personal touch, automated calls. I mean,
Yeah.
we never want to think of it that way. Personal connections are really important. You do see a mix. I mean, we even have, students that it sometimes takes a while with compliance, even with vaccinations and getting students into schools. We've seen a spike with students that are experiencing homelessness. There's some different parameters on that. So we can keep students in school a little bit longer and give them some opportunities when they're in dire situations like that.
Okay. Thanks.
Mhm.
Anyone else questions? Please go ahead, Ravi.
Can you go back to that slide on the English learning metrics? There's a couple questions about that. So, on the left were weighted indices, and then you have this indicator score. My question, I guess, is what would a goal be for those weighted indices and indicator scores? Is it 4.8 is what you're trying to get?
Yeah,
Or-
it's 4.8 according to Access, yes, that's the goal. Because then they would be able to exit.
Yeah. So, but for the weighted index is the average
Yeah, weighted
individual
index.
scores.
Yeah, weighted index is not, this is not a score out of 4.8 or anything like that.
Yeah.
The weighted index is given compared to the indicator score. When they meet a certain indicator score, that's how basically the points they get out of 5.
All right. So, and to simplify the explanation to me and the audience, I would assume, is 3.73 a really great score, or is that average kind of, or bad, or what should we think about that?
I think it's better than average. It helps me when I look at to actually look at the indicator score because that's out of 100.
All right.
So
So,
if you think about it that way, you can see 72%, 74%.
so what is good for that? Like, to me, if it's on an A, B, C, F scale, that's a C minus. That sounds bad. Or is that actually good to be in the 70s?
I think you also have to consider, again, there's lots of variables. This is the first year. This has been measured.
Yeah.
And so you would have to break this down even further and see, for these students, how many of them have been here since they were in kindergarten? What is their level? How long have they been here? There's a lot of factors. I think that this number doesn't tell everything.
Yeah. So when you have something like the report card, you have a couple options, and that is, one, you can just justify things and move on, and not really pay attention to it. Or you can look at it and set some kind of goals, So all of those next steps and current steps, those are all things that really, I think could have been written 6 months ago, probably nothing related to this actual report card. So I think what we really need to do is drill down and figure out what the issues are. I mean, you made a comment that the two dual language schools are doing great compared to the other ones. Their numbers are higher. That's all I could tell you about that. But then Yankee Ridge is also a dual language school. So, are there more Spanish as a ESL at Yankee Ridge versus French DL? I don't know.
I mean, as far as, are you asking me as far, do we have more
No, I'm
Spanish
saying,
speaking schools?
why isn't the French DL so is the French DL program not working very well, or is it because they are working well, but they're outnumbered by Spanish ESL students on this number? So that's the kind of, if you're going to actually use the report card to try to improve yourself, to make your report card better for next year or the year after that, that's the kind of stuff that I think needs to be done.
And we will. Those are definitely some questions that get us to probe things further.
I mean,
to-
this whole thing about like justifying and moving on versus critically thinking about it, in my profession, when doctors come to this community to interview, we tell them you can live in Muhammad. That is what the hospitals tell those guys that are coming in, not come live in our town. So part of that is the report card. So that's what the public all around are looking at.
I mean, Robbie really does make a good point, and there's a lot of data here. I mean, there's compiled data at the top that we're looking at with the ratings, but there's lots of detailed data going down in each of our buildings. How does that data specifically feed into measurable goals for each of the buildings' improvement plans?
So thinking of moving forward already at the next principals meeting. I mean, we're breaking things down by student groups and really taking a close look at that. ISB does provide some other guidance when you look at proficiency target scores that, for example, the proficiency targets are divided among 3rd and 4th grade, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and then 9th through 12th. And so when you look at those smaller grade level bands, it will have proficiency targets for every subgroup, and that's what determines how those subgroups are designated. And so this started in 2022, but you'll see a different target for each subgroup, and then this is a moving target that's going to grow from year to year. So when you look at that, and it's different for 3rd and 4th graders compared to 5th and 6th, and it's different for every subgroup among those grade levels, but that target continues to move. But we are going to be looking at that very closely. That's going to be one of the next exercises that we do, looking at that ISB proficiency targets and how that's calculated compared to our own. And like I said, we'll continue to work with our ISB consultants. We have a new consultant from ISB, Dr. Combs. We have several meetings set up with her starting next week. She's super responsive. This is the first that I've seen because, already we're emailing back and forth at 6 and 6:30 in the morning. She's super responsive, so that's good to see as well. But yeah, we'll be looking at all of this data and continuing to break it down. We also use our map. I know I had a board member when we were looking at this at first. These results are Illinois Assessment of Readiness. So this uses our IAR for elementary and middle school and SAT for high school. This does not, what I presented tonight is not MAP, but we utilize our MAP too. So MAP is a predictor. And so when we look at that, and Ms. Kale Lewandowski shared with me shortly before this presentation tonight too, because we keep looking at things closer and closer. But MAP is a predictor, and when we look at the scores that we received, it was close, what we saw with MAP. So I know I was asked, were these results a big surprise to you? Not from what we saw at the end of the year. There may have been a 10-point difference. It was close, though, what we're seeing with MAP. So we will continue to use that. We continue to get staff to buy into it so that, we can consistently monitor progress and then intervene as needed.
With regards to the survey piece, the 4 essential survey piece, question I have is it the responses that we get in the submitted responses that factor in, or is it the percent of people who complete it that factor in the score, or a combination of both?
It's a good question. So it's student participation. And so it's not how they respond. It's just that we make sure that our students all participate and take it. And then we still get feedback on where that that falls, that information, it does provide us with feedback, but the 5% is based on student participation. And there's a window. It's not a one day and done deal. So we usually have a month or so to complete that. But we just need to make sure we keep pulling students in. If they're absent, we need to pull them in because, again, every point matters on this. And we want to make sure we capitalize on that.
Any other questions or comments?
How were you able to like obtain the differences between excused absences, information and data, and then unexcused absences?
So that is a good question, Paulina. So for state reporting, when we look at chronically absent students, the state, it does not matter if it's excused or unexcused. So it's just days out. So if a student misses 10% or more, that's part of our chronic absenteeism. So it's really important that, you know, that students just do their best to be at school whenever they can, because those numbers add up. And then also, like I mentioned, we want to make sure that we correct any errors. If we have a student that has been out of class, but then they come to class, has that been corrected in our Skyward? Because at the secondary level, missed class periods, one here, one there, those will eventually add up to days. And so, you know, we see that sometimes too. Sometimes when students are even present at school, if they're not in class, that all affects our chronic absenteeism.
Thank
Good
you.
question. Thank you.
Going back to absenteeism, if a student like consistently misses first period at the high school, for example, how does that factor into, is it just 8 periods across 8 days count as one day, or how does that work?
It would. I'd have to double check on that. But yeah, those absences are going to eventually show up as a half day or a day. It all builds up.
I mean, is there, I guess, a way for like the SCAs to provide feedback back to the district in terms of additional resources, additional tools that we could give them in order to help with their job of increasing decreasing our absenteeism?
I meet with them Friday, so I will definitely ask them. That's a good question. I do know in the past sometimes that they'll have another individual that goes with them on home visits. I know that that's helpful, so they're not going by themselves sometimes, and so that's happened too. But yeah.
I know we've seen this in other areas. We have. It seems like there's a difficulty in terms of consistently being able to contact families. I understand families we have a high mobility rate here in the district. We have lots of people who have to work jobs at odd hours, and it can be difficult to contact people. But I think we may want to invest in some brainstorming with regards to doing things that help our ability to get in contact with parents, guardians. Sorry, I'm kind of taking over. Does anybody else have any comments or questions?
Well, I have comments about the report card is amazingly confusing, and you can do a really deep dive into all the data, and I have a hard time divining any kind of sense of it, but I was able to look and see that well, obviously it's not good across the board. The district is doing pretty poorly. So at first blush, you look at it and you say, well, this is bad. Okay, this is sad. What are we going to do? But I look back at, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I'll go back and say last year we had 3 small schools achieving some student growth via the IAR and exceeding state averages. The 3 largest schools did not. So now we are going to be looking at having 4 large schools, and I just want to know what our plans are to achieve student growth above the state averages in those large schools when we couldn't last time. So we're sort of painting ourselves into a corner, if you will. So,
Yeah, I guess, you know, again, there's a lot of variables, you know, and definitely tough decisions that have had to been made, especially when you saw the information on our long-term subs and new teachers. We would have had even more. You know, I think what we have to really focus on is, one, we have the recruitment and retention grant, is what we can do to recruit and retain the staff that we have. That's really important. And I don't want to, you know, we're lucky that we have all of our subs, you know, our long-term subs, so we're thankful for them, so that we have individuals working with our students. But we also have to, again, as I mentioned, we have to really look at the resources that we have in place for our students, and that we have tangible resources that our teachers can rely on, that that there's no question on what they're using daily. You know, so, and again, professional development along with that. Like I mentioned, the illustrative math, that's key. It's not going to be professional development this year and then we're done. It's going to take time. And then we'll do the same with our ELA, SLA as well. We're going to have to be very creative on our professional development because our teachers are exhausted, and to say that, okay, we're going to have you stay after school several nights a week, we know that that's not going to be in their best interest, so we're going to have to find a way to push the PD into their classrooms, provide some collaboration time during the day, and then perhaps maybe on a Monday staff development, we have some follow-up on this. But we're going to have to rethink the way we've done things in the past, particularly with our resources and with professional development.
So, thank you. So in addition to curriculum, I think Kim is really focusing on the fact that we need a curriculum that we can put in the hands of our new teachers and our subs. But one thing that we've been doing at the administrative level and working with our principals, we've had sessions about attendance, really digging down into those numbers. And now we've shifted our focus to talking a little bit more about student behavior. We've had a lot of conversations around discipline. We recognize that you guys sit in that disciplinary space, so you kind of know what we're dealing with there. But just the day-to-day discipline, I'm not talking about suspensions and expulsions, but just the time out of class. We have a lot of students who are not in their seats receiving instruction all day for lots of different reasons. Like Kim said, there are a lot of variables. And some of it is we have long-term subs who are not trained as in all the strategies and have all the tools to really work with students who are having some behavioral challenges. But we also have a lot of really young, inexperienced teachers who are falling in that same category. So I think yes, we need to focus on student growth, and academics is number one, but there are all those variables that are involved too, with discipline and attendance and PD, and making sure that our most inexperienced people can teach. And if students aren't doing some of the things that they need to do in the classrooms, then teachers can't teach. And I think that is some of what we're seeing in some spaces, and so we're trying to address some of those issues too. So just wanted to add to, I think there are lots of different variables that go into this, but again, I think one of our focuses, which is I think what Dr. Norton was pointing out in those last couple of slides, are what are the resources and what are the things that we're going to do. Yes, we're setting goals. I mean, we've only had this data for a week. So at every single opportunity that we have to be with our principals, we're looking at it. And we will be setting not just school improvement goals, but actual goals for our subgroups. We prefer to look at our MAP data and not rely on IER, because we feel like our MAP data is more of a benchmark for us to be able to compare growth throughout the year and put interventions in place throughout the school year. We only take IER once a year, and we're comparing a test that we take at one snapshot in a year from year to year. But our MAP data, we give 3 times a year, so we can really put some interventions in place, and use that more as a tiered support, between each benchmark testing. So, we're really looking at that data even more intensely now too,
We
to
can look
set
at-
goals.
We can look at the granularity of the subgroups of, with the map test also.
Yes.
Thank you.
I was going to comment that, turning it around is not something that happens like that, It is a long, or like the long game you're playing. So, I think that far better, UA contract that went into place, is going to help with teacher retention, having less requirement or leaning on long-term subs. That's why I asked that long-term sub question you today. Having more as the teacher core gets more experience and more used to working in their teams, or, and then also at the high school level, we're hopefully at the start of like a dynasty of the administration there, as opposed to changing it every 2 years, so, the question you had asked me on the outside once is like, what is the difference of the high school now versus 10 years ago or whatever? And it's really a lot of turnover. You have consistent leadership at the top, then, it's just like a basketball team, when you have a well-known coach, people come to play, So it is a long game. That's my point. And not all the answers are going to be quick fixes that turn around things on the report card in one day, but hopefully all these pieces will add up. So maybe 5 years from now, it'll all be good. But we got to keep working towards that and not give up.
I think. I think it's important though to have a culture in the district and each building that's focused on continual improvement. To that end, I think it would be useful for the board, when presented with the improvement plans that we're going to see later in the year, to be able to tie specific goals to some metric in the report card or elsewhere that that would give us a little more confidence that that number is going to increase, that these designations are going to rise. I'm not one that's going to put the score on the Illinois report card as the one and true metric for success in this district, but as Robbie said, that it is the one way that people coming into this area compare us to other schools around us, and it's important. It does have value. Any other comments or questions?
I was gonna make a comment, and now I can't remember what it was, so it's okay.
Well, I agree that it's, you got to play the long game with it. It's not like you can turn a cruise ship on a dime. And, we just have to keep at it. Yeah, true. But I just don't want to have to dig a hole and then have farther to climb out of it. So,
And as we start the strategic planning process, later this spring, I think.
Yeah, I can assure you we're meeting with our administrators often. I just met with all the principals before this meeting tonight, and we also changed the structure of our program council meetings this year. Typically, it would be 4 times per year, and now we're practically meeting every month, so that we have more support in the spaces with our principals as they're meeting with their whole school improvement teams. And so we have individuals, principal evaluators or individuals from central office that are in all the spaces just to provide support as we are really monitoring things.
are you, for professional development, what kind of pushback are you getting when you are asking teachers to come in on a weekend unpaid, not unpaid?
Yeah, I was gonna say, we can't ask them to
Can't
come in
ask
on
them
a
that,
weekend
but
unpaid.
Are there any more carrots you can dangle in front of them to get them
We
to?
have tried a lot of carrots, particularly we did with illustrative math,
Mhm.
because we wanted to make sure, again, it was really important as we're implementing a new program. And we had nights we've had weekends, we've had after school, all kinds of things, you name it. It worked pretty well with having a lot of different structures. I think there's just a few teachers that didn't participate that were here last year, and then we've, again, worked with the new ones as well. I think that we just try to provide as many options as we can, because one size doesn't work for everybody, right? With family schedules, a weekend may not be ideal, but we've tried all different things.
I'd say it's a pretty decent response, though.
Yeah, I think overall, I mean, choosing one of those options, we were really pleased with the results.
We've done several things over the years to try to increase the amount of PD time we have available. You know, during hours, we have the Wednesdays at the middle school and high school, with the shorter days on Mondays to allow for PD at the end of the day. We added PE teachers at the elementary level in part so that there would be more time for collaboration and types of professional development. I mean, there may be some creative things we could do in our next contract with regards to maybe budgeting more money for hours outside of regular school hours for PD. But, those are all great thoughts.
So I remember what I was going to say, and it was in response kind of to Ravi's comment that we are feeling this same sense of urgency that you are, and we're trying to really work with our principals. I know they have that sense of urgency around our data, and finding those intentional spaces where we can have those urgent conversations with teachers. And one of the things I was going to say, Paul just said it, is we have collaboration time, so principals can be looking at classroom level data, because this is great to have this big district snapshot, right? But what we really need to do is drill down into every single grade level, every single classroom teacher, looking at they all have, the ones who are part of the evaluation plan, they have student growth data that they look at as part of their evaluations. So there are lots of layers where we can really be looking at student data more intentionally. But that sense of urgency when you have something like this right in your face really does, I think, bring us together. And we're really expecting our principals to just kind of be in those spaces and have those conversations. And we're providing as many opportunities as we can this year for them to do that. In principals meetings, we have a monthly administrative cabinet meeting where we're looking at these areas really intentionally and giving our principals the tools so then they can go have these conversations in the building at staff meetings and at collaboration meetings and places like that. Looking at actual, looking at all the groups, right? Our Black students, our ELs, our Hispanic students, our special education students, like looking at every single group in the different grade levels to really see progress at that level, because that's the kind of data we want to be able to bring back. We want our principals to come in May and say, from our first administration of MAP, we see the Black students in third grade have made this much progress, and our special education students in fourth grade made this much progress, because that is what is going to be showing growth for us. Not that the IAR is not important, it's great because it compares us to the rest of the state, but we really want to compare our students, as they make progress through the school year too.
With our district.
With our district data, yeah.
I'm first off, I'm very hopeful the principals say that stuff in May, because those are some otherwise boring presentations. But if they have plans and data, then it's good and very interesting at that point. But here's my question. If we redistrict for next year, what happens to all these statuses of these buildings? Does it stay with the street address, or is it just like you get a fresh start?
In the cycle, you're in the cycle.
I'm pretty sure it stays with the building.
Yeah, it stays with the building.
Yeah, even if, there's so many factors with all of this. Even if a school would become undesignated next year, right, when next results come out, they still have a 4-year cycle. So even if a school would score commendable next year, then they continue this cycle. But if things change.
I mean, if building's comprehensive and they only have 10% of the same students next year as they do this year, you would think it would be somehow different.
We would have to
But-
consult with our ISB friends,
Mhm,
how we would
yes.
handle
Okay.
that.
Absolutely.
I don't think that'd be the case, the example I just gave, but
No,
just hypothetically.
I suspect we get some pushback on that kind of disruption.
But I do appreciate that ISB does give you a multi-year opportunity to receive supports and make growth, right? Like, so they don't snatch that back from you the first, as soon as you go from comprehensive up a level or to commendable, you still get to continue to get some of that support, which is good, to help you maintain it, so.
This has been a great discussion. Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you.
The Dr. Norton show, she did
Yeah,
really well.
you've had a busy week, Dr.
It's our
Norton.
curriculum tonight.
Our next study topic, our last one, is the e-learning plan review.
Okay, so it is time to renew our e-learning plan. It was 3 years ago when we sat here and did this in December. It's hard to believe, but so with the e-learning plan, there's some changes that we've made from previously. So grades 6 through 12 have their own device, and so they would receive instruction first on Google Classroom. And pre-K to 5, in fact, we'll be sending packets home by November 9th this week. So if we would have inclement weather, students would have devices for those that are one-to-one, and for pre-K and elementary, they would have some packets that are going to be sent home for that time. The difference from this e-learning plan to when we did this previously was we had specific times in there for during the pandemic when students had to be on synchronously live. And so with this plan, it's asynchronous. So if it was a cold weather day or a snow day, they don't have to be on a device for 5 hours straight. But the activities would be asynchronous, so they could take those breaks when they needed to. In order for this plan to be approved, there's a couple things that we had to do before tonight. We had to have it posted in the paper for 10 days, have the public hearing. We worked with our union to develop this plan. They were very collaborative as we did this. And then it meets the approval tonight. And then this has to get approved following this by Gary Lewis, our regional superintendent. So there's several steps that we have to follow. Now, if we would have been on our game at the beginning of the year, we would not have had to use a day for when we had all that heat, when our air conditioners couldn't keep up. Who would have thought that would have happened when we have air conditioning in all of our schools? But if we would have had packets distributed, devices, we would have been able to count that as an e-learning day, but we just weren't ready. So lesson learned on that. We'll know in the future if something like that were to happen again, we'd be ready. But again, so tonight I'm asking for your approval for this 3-year e-learning plan.
Board members, any questions?
The software that's used seems to work pretty good. Do we do any, like, evaluations with teachers to make sure that all that they have for e-learning is working and helpful, and do we look at, like, any best practices?
The
or
good thing
anything
is
like
it's
that?
things that they're using day to day. So
Okay.
it's not that it's something brand new on an inclement weather day. So it's,
It's
you know,
just
it's,
the regular stuff. And then as far as the hardware side for teachers, are those just replaced when they need it replaced, or is there a certain cycle for those?
John, how often is the cycle for devices typically?
For teacher devices, we're looking at kind of like a 5 to 6 year cycle. We had kind of with some ESSER funding and some other things, we did kind of a forklift upgrade. So we're kind of
Ahead
in
or-
year 3 of that, and then we're hoping to kind of spread it out so it's not as much of a major upgrade all at once.
Yeah, okay.
For e-learning days, how is attendance, I guess, measured? And is there, do we have any statistics on our e-learning days we've had in the past with regards to level of student participation on those days?
we end up getting it as close to 100% as we can, because we also account for barriers. So for example, if students are not able to connect and not complete the work, they have time available once school returns. They have 3 days to make that up. And so if a student didn't, lost their packet, we're not going to penalize them. We would give them another one so that they would have an opportunity to make up anything that was missed. So we provide that time if they cannot do it for some reason on that day due to situations in life.
I'm sure I get that, but I mean, do we have like, we took a e-learning day, let's say last February because of snow or whatever, and then we have the students come back and they can make things up in a 3-day period. But do we have like a number that's okay? We hit, 85%. We hit 92%.
We would be able to look at our attendance for whatever day that was. And then there's, also if students already had prearranged absences for different medical reasons, other things, so there would be absences in there for that. So we would be able to look at, our attendance that day.
I guess I just want to make sure, that our e-learning days aren't measurably different, than our in-person days. That's all.
And we're still providing internet for families that need it. Are people still like requesting that, and is that even still a factor now that we're out of
Some of the
COVID?
funding and programs that we had in place have twilighted either earlier this year or the previous year. We do still there's some codes that are still out and some other things out, but it's not as prevalent as it was
Okay. So we're
during
not really
2020, 2021.
Okay. That's what I was gonna say. Are we getting requests at all?
For example, remember we had even buses that were equipped with wireless.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't be doing anything like that on
Right, no.
e-learning day, so it wouldn't be the same. That's why we have those parameters in there for if some reason a student's not able to connect.
Then they can still.
Or their Chromebook is at grandma's and
Yeah.
they can't get to it because of the snow or something. They have a couple days to make it up, yeah.
Okay.
Is there any idea of how much, what's the word I'm looking for? How many kids can actually connect to the internet? I mean, is there an idea of a number?
We will have those numbers from when we did surveys during the pandemic, because we did
Right.
survey. We haven't done any recently.
Okay. But you're not getting requests for internet means that either they don't need it, they already have service, or they don't want it, I guess.
Yeah,
Well,
for-
we're in school a lot more
Yeah, for
too.
grades
In
6
school,
through
yeah.
12, I mean, yeah, because they can take their device home
Mhm.
and, they can connect or reach out to us if for some reason that they couldn't.
And remind me, this is just to show our plan of action.
This is our
Just
plan
a
of
refreshed-
action, so that if we want to be able to count an inclement weather day as an e-learning day and message that to our families, if we didn't have this approved, we wouldn't be able to do that.
Gotcha.
And so Ben, when John said there's some codes out,
Yeah.
we had, they're Comcast codes, so we were paying for internet for many families, in 2020, 2021, even probably last year. So we still have some of those Comcast codes that the district pays for families who have requested it, but we aren't getting those requests like we were, 2 years ago even,
So families who have cable television, Comcast, they'd be able to get free service essentially.
And I think
There's some requirements for it. There's some income requirements, and I think you have to not currently have
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 internet
service, right.
through, yes.
and I suspect a lot of families have these
Yeah.
and are using
Yep, yep.
hotspots. I know a lot of people connect via our hotspot.
My son
Or
uses
just
it, my
using
phone
their
when we
phone,
Or
drive.
period.
using their phones, period, yep, yep,
I connected to your phone, Dad. Thanks.
yeah.
Right.
Board members, ambassadors, any questions?
For students that turn their work in during that 3-day period, do they lose points on the assignments, or is that more up to the teacher?
They
or
don't lose any points.
Okay.
Nope, they have the ability to be able to make it
Okay.
up for full credit.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you. Yeah, this is on the agenda later
Yes.
for approval. Is there an absolute date that this, by state statute has to be approved by?
Really as soon as possible, because if we have an inclement weather day, and like I said, packets are going home by November 9th, and you just never know when we'll get that kind
Understood.
of weather.
I just asking.
Yes.
Okay, leading into then our 2 action items for the evening. The first is the approval of a life safety amendment. Katie, would you provide context, I guess, for this action item?
Yep. So we will be bringing you next week a school safety maintenance grant application and for another phase of the UMS roof to do some construction to replace and repair some portions of the UMS roof. We've done that several times. And so we're going to do another phase that includes 3 sections of the roof, and we plan to use life safety funds as the matching source for the grant. So in order to be able to do that, we have to amend the life safety application that's on file with ISB. And so that's what we're bringing you tonight. And that way we can have this step out of the way so that can pave the way for us to apply for the grant next week with your approval.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion for the floor?
So moved.
So is this,
So this is
we
to
are voting on it, or it is coming next week?
it's an action item tonight. So
Alright.
we're voting on this tonight, so they have the ability to submit the grant over the next week.
Okay.
I can comment but I know you're in the middle of the vote, but this is information that IGW prepares for us. They submit the life safety amendment in the IWAS system for us. And then I'll bring another packet of information just about the grant next week.
Okay,
So
got
I'll have more information for you then too as well.
Good.
Alright, I'll second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any other further comments or questions? Let's take a roll call vote, please. So roll call.
Member Jones?
Yes.
Member Hasanaka?
Yes.
Member Baxley, yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
President Pulaski?
Yes, 12.2 is approval of the aforementioned USD 116 e-learning plan. Is there a motion for the floor?
I move for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further comments or questions? Roll call, please.
Member Jones?
Yes.
Member Hasanaka?
Yes.
Member Baxley, yes. Vice President Exum?
Yes.
President Pulaski?
Yes, there is a call for future special executive meeting. We were having our board workshop / evaluation session on November 29th with Perry Hill present. We will also be scheduling, I think, 8 expulsion hearings over the next couple weeks, in which was it 4?
Today that they're only going to be 4.
Oh, thank goodness. The 13th and 15th, 5:30 and 7. Okay, that's good news. Relatively. Superintendent's report. Better than 8.
I know, I think we were overzealous, Paul, ready to start the meeting, and we forgot to have our moment of silence. Do you want to do that right now, or? Yep.
Coron Hopkins is a student we had at Urbana Adult Education who, I hate doing this because it seems we're doing this way, way, way too much, but he lost his life to the scourge of gun violence in this country. I could take this time to honor him. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And our student ambassadors are just so thorough. I think they've covered some of the things that I was going to share in the superintendent report, but that's okay. We will go through some of these a little faster. So as Paulina and Dominica already noted, our UHS Girls Swim and Dive at sectionals this past Saturday placed in 2 different relays. So Savannah, Avalon, Maddie, and Sydney in the 4 free relay placed 6th, and then in the 200 free relay placed 5th. Cecilia, Savannah, Maddie, and Sydney again. Cheyenne Harris took 5th in diving. So congratulations on a great season to the UHS Girls Swim and Dive team. We also want to recognize, I know in the superintendent report, We had information recognizing the UMS and UHS band, but we also wanted to include the ILMEA students selected to go to the higher level in strings and orchestra. So we thought we'd just put everybody together now that we had data for information for all of our students in all of our musical areas. So congratulations to all of these young people on their efforts in the Illinois Music Education Association program. And here are the UMS students as well. So great representation. I see some repeat names here of students who have been involved for multiple years. So congratulations to all of them. Thursday, we are celebrating 50 years of early childhood education at UECS. At 5 o'clock, we'll have a very short program. We've invited former principals, former teachers, current teachers, families that are currently at UECS, as well as previous families. We have some folks who have worked with us over the years from the university coming. Previous board members are planning to come. I hope all of our current board is able to be there. We'll have just a very short program. We have a video that we've put together from some of our people just sharing their reflections on the impact of early childhood on their career or their life. So it'll be a fun time. And then there is a family event immediately following. The Thanksgiving dinner. So we're still kind of working through some details for this, but right now it is scheduled for November 23rd. Student Council, formerly Student Senate, is hosting the 50th annual anniversary for the Thanksgiving dinner at UHS. So right now it is scheduled from 4 to 6. We are still working through the volunteer pieces if you're interested in volunteering. We are also trying to shore up our folks that we need to be on hand for the public health department there. So hopefully we're going to be able to work all those details out in the next few days. Our second Family and Community Cafe event, if you remember when Mrs. Webster and Dr. Mitchell were here presenting, the Family and Community Cafe is a through the arm of the Equity Action Plan, and it is part of the family care goal through the Equity Action Plan. So our second event is November 28th. It will be in the gym at Dr. Williams. Child care is available and light refreshments will be served. The purpose of the Family and Community Cafe is to create a space for families, community members, and staff to have collaborative conversations on basically what we talked about tonight, how to improve outcomes for our students in the district. It is time for the diaper drive. So we did this last year. Early Childhood and See You Early are holding their annual diaper drive December 4th through 8th. There are collection sites at our schools. We also have a box at central office. We're collecting wipes and diapers of any size. They love having pull-ups, which are super popular. The diapers benefit UECS, See You Early, and the United Way Bottom Line Diaper Bank. So we'll be sharing this often between now and December 4th. This weekend, the Urbana High School production of 12th Night, the musical, is opening. So the first shows are Thursday, November 9th through 11th at 7 p.m. And then Sunday at 2. So we've provided the link for the 12th Night tickets. You can also buy tickets at the door, of course, at the in the Cobb Auditorium. And several of the cast members were on CI Living. So we've linked that. So when we share this out tomorrow with the district and on social media, we encourage people to click on that link to see their interview today on CI Living. School Psychologist Week is this week. So we have some amazing school psychologists who support our multi-tiered system of support. They work with a lot of our special educators, and they just do a phenomenal job helping our students learn and grow academically, socially, and emotionally. So if you read the student, not the student, the superintendent update on Friday. You saw that we have been working with our attorney and our administrators, and Beth Ladd has taken the lead on this, the Executive Director of Student Services, to really shore up our procedures for visiting the buildings. So we just wanted to remind our staff and everyone here in the public that we all play a part in keeping our buildings safe. And so if you're asked to sign in and out, show an ID, wear a visitor's badge, we really appreciate you doing that and doing it with a nice attitude and in spirit of safety. And our staff members know, to, if they see someone in the building without a badge, or we know people have not signed in and out, we're directing them back to the office. So we also have extended our procedure and process for observing in classrooms, and that is also going to be vetted and streamlined through the Executive Director of Student Services, Mrs. Ladd. And we've linked that document there as well from the superintendent update. So this Friday is Staff Development Day. So that means, as a reminder, families, there's no school for early childhood and elementary students. We're going to be having a lot of great conversations about all the things that we've been talking about. And then early dismissal for UHS and UMS. And Thanksgiving break is here very quickly this year, it seems. So November 22nd through the 24th. And then we have some FOIAs. You want to read those? Okay. Paul's going to do them.
Go ahead and do this real quick. Aluminum data, I should have had you read that. A copy of the last property and casualty insurance renewal summary for all lines of insurance purchased by the school district. A copy of the last employee benefits insurance renewal summary for health, dental, and vision plans sponsored by the school district. And then we have 3 more from Construct Connect, Laura Siga. First one is awarded contractor and awarded amount for the above project. I would also like to know the anticipated start dates if determined. This was requested on 3 separate projects. I see 3 requests asking for the same data. Board reports. So I'd like to kick off real quick public conversation with regards to the delegate assembly at the IASB conference in Chicago in about 10 days or so. I will be representing the district with regards to voting at the assembly. I just wanted feedback from the other members, and I mailed this out earlier. But there's basically 5 individual resolutions that we voted on by the General Assembly, and these it basically informs the ISB body of whether or not to lobby the state legislature for policy changes, et cetera. So this is an opportunity, I guess, to get feedback from the board members present. Sure. The first one is with regards to industrial construction. So it's basically encourage passage of legislation to prevent industrial facilities from being built too near school buildings.
I saw this, and the do not adopt recommendation seemed a little, well, I was a little, not concerned, but thinking how many communities have open industrial space near a school, industrially zoned space near a school. And I can't think of many.
Yeah, I don't know if the DART facility counts.
DART?
For us being close enough to Prairie, I don't know, or to Williams, I mean.
Definitely, yeah. Well, they said here that, rural communities are really the ones that would be hurt. Then again, there's probably more space. I don't think that we, as Urbana, needs to worry about this. I would say the health effects of heavy industry is probably more concerning to me. I would say go against the recommendation, but that's just my opinion.
I agree, do not adopt. I think it should be a local decision.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
each individual community should
Right.
handle that and not the state as a whole making a decision for everybody. So
I agree.
I would say do
It
not.
should be left to the local zoning. That seems like a zoning issue to me, not statewide.
All right. Thank you. The next one is school resource officer funding. So this is basically a request for the ISB to lobby the legislature to help fund and offset the costs of school resource officers throughout the state. The recommendation from the resolutions committee was to adopt.
I agree.
I agree. That sounds like free money.
Next is with regards to bus driver regulations. So the statement, the resolution starts off at they support changes to the federal and state school transportation regulations that return licensing requirements and driver trainer liability back to pre-2023 levels at minimum and allow local training and testing. So again, this is another one of those basically pushing the regulations back to the local district instead of being mandated by the state, and the resolutions committee recommends to do adopt.
I agree
there
with
as
that.
well.
The background is pretty terrifying when they're, not terrifying, but concerning when some communities are, like you said earlier, having the National Guard drive their kids to school. If there's a shortage of drivers, I think we should make it a little easier to get people in.
Okay.
Reasonable.
We always want to know what you think, Lola. All right. Next up is the employment history review resolution, and it's requesting that I'll read the statement resolution. Be it resolved that the Illinois Association of School Boards shall request the Illinois legislature consider using the Illinois Department of Child and Family Services child abuse and neglect tracking system as a means to fulfill the employment history review of Faith's law. So I wouldn't mind having Angie's opinion on that either, but the resolutions committee recommended do not adopt.
Their reasoning was sort of lackluster. I don't know, they didn't really come up with a reason here.
It doesn't fulfill the requirements of the law completely, so I think that was
Using the
a
two,
big piece of it.
the two systems?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if Angie's familiar with what's written here, but
Sorry, I was looking at Little Mermaid auditions at Urbana Middle
That's
School
th-
online.
that's
So
fine.
from a
That's-
stencil, can you, regarding face law, so they're suggesting not to adopt, can you give me just a little bit more information before I give you my opinion on that?
They're basically asking. There you go. It's a long bit of legalese, and but basically they're asking that the legislature change the rules to allow for the use of DCFS child CANTS to fulfill the employment history review. So I would guess I need a better
Definitely
understanding of
easier
how
for
we
that
do
piece.
employment history reviews.
I really like I know that the new requirement is a lot of work, but we recently received an employment verification through face law that it would not have been a DCFS hit, and it would have also not necessarily come up in the reference check. And so we recently kept someone out of our schools that would have put our kids in danger, I think.
Okay.
So I think that it is expensive for us, and it's a lot of additional work, but it keeps our kids safe. So
All right. And lastly, financing public education local. Be it resolved, the Illinois Associated School Boards shall advocate for additional funding to be provided for regional alternative safe schools to allow for an elementary appropriate program. Additional funding and approved certification programs for board certified behavior analysts at school districts. Also asking that the legislature review SB 100 to make necessary changes to allow for more local control as it relates to student discipline post-COVID. And the resolutions committee recommended do not adopt.
So this is an alternative school at the elementary level.
Now we're
Basically.
ready for elementary.
Yeah, it's basically
Yeah.
what this is. talking
Yeah, it was
about.
just not isn't something that we've ever had a need for.
I'm in agreement with your recommendation.
Okay. So
I mean, I don't disagree that SB 100 should be looked at again, but
it's
I
overdue.
definitely don't.
And I
I
agree,
mean, I would
there is
agree
an
with this.
increase in aggressive behavior and lots of, like I said, we're dealing with lots of behavioral challenges, but I don't think.
There's
having
another way to
having
try
an
that
alternative
first.
school for elementary would be
Yeah,
a solution to that.
I don't either.
All right. Thank you very much for your input. I'll reach out to Sitlali and Sherry as well, but I think I'll be just following the recommendations that were discussed here. Any other board reports this evening?
I don't have a report. I just wanted to mention that I was asked by my daughter's second grade teacher to come to her class today to help in their community and government section. And they interviewed me as a school board member. So that was fun. I had a good time. And they were asking me lots of questions. So,
That's awesome.
Future board members.
right. Yes, exactly. But yeah.
I
That's
wholeheartedly
their bedtime, probably.
wholeheartedly recommend all of us spending as much time in the buildings as possible. I think that's the best way for us to get a feel what's really going on.
That's one of the main reasons I ran, sort of become a spokesperson, and I love going to the schools. So.
Any other board reports? Hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. See you 1 week from tonight. Our next board meeting is 1 week from tonight at 6:30.